Welcome to Fred's 10-minute marketing courses.
Today we are discussing copywriting architecture that survives the AI era, written by Fred James. And I just have to ask you, have you ever spent like 2 entire days crafting this beautifully emotional, tear-jerking piece of marketing copy?
Oh, absolutely. We all have.
Right, you spend hours on it only to hit publish, and then you just watch your click-through rate sit at absolute zero.
It is the absolute worst feeling.
It really is. If you work on the front lines of marketing, you know that exact sinking feeling. I mean, honestly, it makes you question your entire career.
Yeah, it's a brutal reality check for sure. You put your heart and soul into the text, and the market just responds with total silence.
Crickets. Just nothing.
Exactly. But, from a management perspective, the problem usually isn't your vocabulary. It's not your creative writing skills.
What is it then?
Well, the problem is the arena you are playing in. Enterprise writing and literary creation, they operate on two completely different operating systems.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Literary writing, it pursues the ultimate expression of art. It's about nuance, ambiguity, making the reader feel something profound. But corporate copywriting, that is a heavily weaponized operational tool.
Weaponized. I like that word for it.
Yeah, because every single word carries a strict commercial purpose. It is designed to drive a very specific business outcome.
But when you are sitting at your desk, especially if you consider yourself a creative person, the temptation to lean into the art is just overwhelming.
Oh, for sure. You want to be the clever one.
Exactly. You want to write something clever that stops the scroll, something that might even win a Cannes Lion award.
Of course.
But Fred James introduces this core metaphor that, honestly, it completely shifts how we should view our daily job.
The rice metaphor, right?
Yes. He says that before you try to write that award-winning masterpiece, you must first serve your audience a bowl of edible white rice.
Okay, now play devil's advocate with me for a second here.
Sure.
Telling a modern marketing team to write edible white rice sounds, frankly, incredibly conservative.
It does.
We are operating in an algorithm-driven attention economy. If we are just serving plain white rice instead of highly seasoned, explosive, viral hooks, how do we ever grab the consumer's eye in the first place?
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a recipe for getting completely ignored.
It does sound counterintuitive at first. I totally thought the same thing. But white rice isn't about being intentionally boring.
Okay.
It is about building your entire message on an unshakable foundation of facts. It might not be a Michelin star dish, but it guarantees your customer won't get food poisoning.
Food poisoning.
Right. And in our world, food poisoning translates directly to a massive PR crisis. We have to remember that every single word a company outputs is essentially a piece of legal testimony.
Wow, yeah, that is a harsh but necessary lens. It is not just a clever headline. It is a legally binding promise.
Exactly.
And Fred James provides this classic disaster scenario from the consumer electronics sector that just perfectly illustrates what happens when marketing teams ignore this fundamental rule.
Oh, the smartwatch example. I love this one.
It's so good. So imagine your company is launching a brand new smartwatch. The engineering team, they spend months building it, running diagnostic tests, and they finally hand the official spec sheet over to the marketing department.
The specs that nobody actually wants to read.
Right. And the sheet clearly designates the watch as splash-proof.
And splash-proof is a highly specific, rigidly defined engineering metric.
Very specific.
It basically means you can wash your hands while wearing it, or maybe survive getting caught in a light spring drizzle.
Right, but put yourself in the shoes of a junior copywriter looking at the word splash-proof.
It's not very sexy.
It sounds weak. It doesn't inspire a sense of adventure. The marketing team, they want dramatic flair. They want to sell a rugged, extreme sports lifestyle.
Naturally.
So without consulting the engineers or the legal department, someone makes a unilateral decision to change the copy.
Oh, no.
Yeah. They change it to read fully waterproof, taking you from the highest mountains to the deepest oceans.
That is an absolute ticking time bomb.
A massive one.
Because sure, it looks fantastic on a massive highway billboard, but the operational fallout is going to be catastrophic.
Completely.
A customer buys that smartwatch, they actually believe your grand marketing promise, and they take it on a 30-meter scuba dive.
Yep.
The pressure breaches the seal, and the watch instantly dies.
And the cascading financial consequences of that one creative liberty, they are just staggering. It never just ends with one broken watch.
No, it never does.
First, your customer service centers get flooded with furious calls, which instantly drains operational resources and drives up overhead.
And the people on the phones have no idea why it's happening.
Exactly. Then, that angry customer takes to the internet, they post teardown videos, they leave terrible form reviews, and blast the brand on social media.
Building a permanent, toxic digital footprint.
Exactly.
But surely the accounting department catches the massive spike in physical returns and steps in to do damage control, right?
Hell, actually, the e-commerce algorithms will catch it much faster.
Oh!
And their punishment is merciless. E-commerce platforms exist to serve customers reliable products. When their automated systems detect a sudden spike in return rates and a wave of negative sentiment, they don't ask for an explanation.
They just act.
Right. They directly penalize your brand by downgrading your product listing. And if the return rate hits a certain threshold, they remove the product entirely.
So your multi-million-dollar smartwatch launch becomes virtually invisible overnight.
Poof. Gone. On top of that, the legal department is now facing potential fines for false advertising, and accounting is hunting down the marketing director to explain the staggering logistical costs of processing all those dead units.
Ouch.
Yeah, it's a very expensive lesson in why factual accuracy is the absolute red line.
You simply cannot sacrifice the objective truth just to use a better adjective.
No, you can't.
But that leaves us with a massive structural problem, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, if we are strictly bound by cold, hard facts, how do we avoid sounding like a sterile database?
I see what you mean.
If you just hand a consumer a dry list of 100% factual specifications, it reads like a mind-numbing instruction manual. And absolutely no one shares an instruction manual on their social media feed.
No, they definitely don't. And this is where the true architecture comes into play. You have the facts, but now you need to build a skeleton to support them.
A skeleton?
Right. Fred James calls this context.
Okay, let's break down how to actually build that skeleton, starting with the micro level.
Micro context, yes.
Micro context is essentially the glue that connects one paragraph to the next. Think about how the human brain actually processes information.
Very lazily.
Exactly. The brain is inherently lazy. It is biologically wired to conserve energy, which means it hates burning calories to figure out complex technical puzzles.
That is entirely true. If you just throw a factual specification at the reader, like, this smartphone uses our proprietary nano cooling material, their brain just stalls out.
Right, because what does that even mean to a normal person?
Exactly. You haven't explained why they should care, so they just skip over it.
You left them to do all the heavy lifting of translating the feature into a benefit. You have to provide the logical bridge for them.
How do you do that?
You take that dry fact and you instantly add the context. You say, because of this new nano cooling material, your phone will never lag, overheat, or stutter while you are playing high-end 3D games on the subway.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Suddenly, the fact isn't just a piece of trivia. It has tangible, real-world value to the consumer's daily life.
You are answering the so what question before they even have to ask it.
Exactly.
That covers the micro level. But the macro context is equally critical. Macro context dictates the pacing, the rhythm, and the overall architectural structure of your writing.
And you can't just pick one at random, right?
No. The structure you choose must be entirely dictated by the reader's intent. Fred James contrasts two primary architectural approaches here: storytelling and the pyramid structure.
And they serve two completely different psychological masters.
Yes, they do.
Let's look at the storytelling structure first. This is perfect for something like an in-depth profile piece on a prominent tech CEO.
Like a magazine feature.
Right. You start the narrative in a humble, poorly lit Silicon Valley garage. You slowly build the tension as the company barely survives the dot-com bust or maybe a near bankruptcy.
The classic hero's journey.
Exactly. And finally, you reach the triumphant emotional climax of them ringing the bell at the stock exchange. Readers clicking on a long-form profile, they actively want that slow, emotional build-up. They are strapping in for the ride.
They are. But I would argue that using that same slow, emotional storytelling arc for a flagship consumer product release is a massive management failure.
A failure.
Total failure. It is like trying to eat a premium steak with a soup spoon.
Huh.
It is simply the wrong tool for the job.
Right.
If I'm a consumer tuning into a highly anticipated smartphone launch, I do not care about your founder's childhood dreams right now.
No, you really don't.
My intent is purely transactional. I want to know three things immediately. What does the device look like? How much does it cost? And when can I pre-order it?
You are completely right. If you try to tell me a 10-paragraph story about the inspiration behind the phone's casing before telling me the price, I am closing the tab.
Instantly.
That is where the pyramid structure becomes absolutely crucial for corporate communication. You cannot bury the lead.
Never bury the lead.
You must hit the reader with the most critical bottom line information, price, availability, and core value proposition in the very first paragraph.
Yet straight to the point.
Yes, you satisfy their burning questions at the top of the pyramid. Then, and only then, do you layer the intricate details about the battery chemistry or the camera sensor sizes further down the page.
For the nerds who actually want to read that far.
Exactly. For the subset of readers who actually want to dive deep.
You have to respect the reader's time by matching your delivery to their appetite.
Yeah.
And, speaking of how readers consume information, we have to address visual context.
Oh, this is a big one.
Screen fatigue is perhaps the biggest hurdle modern marketers face today. People simply do not read text on a glowing screen the same way they read a printed paperback novel.
They really don't read sentences at all, do they? They scan.
Just skimming.
Eye tracking studies consistently show that people's eyes follow an F-shaped scanning pattern on digital screens.
An F shape.
Yeah. They look straight across the top headline, then they scan rapidly down the left margin, and maybe dart horizontally across the middle if something catches their attention.
That is so true. I do that all the time.
We all do. They are hunting for keywords, trying to extract the maximum amount of information with the minimum amount of effort.
Which means if a potential customer lands on your product page and sees a giant, unbroken block of dense text,
A wall of text.
their brain instantly registers it as a massive wall of cognitive friction. It looks like too much work, and they will immediately bounce to a competitor's site.
Without a second thought.
This is why Fred James strongly advocates for the aggressive use of bullet points. And to be clear, this isn't just an aesthetic choice to make the page look pretty.
No, bullet points serve as vital visual anchors. They break down those intimidating walls of text, creating white space that lets the reader's eye rest.
It gives the brain a break.
Exactly. A well-crafted, bulleted list allows the scanner to grasp your product's core value proposition in a fraction of a second.
Okay, so logically, we have assembled the facts, we built the micro and macro context to support them, and we've optimized the layout for visual scanning.
Right.
But all of that architecture is useless if nobody actually starts reading or if they leave without taking action.
Yeah, that brings us to the most critical transition points of any piece of writing, the opening and the ending.
The front door and the back door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Getting the reader through the front door and successfully closing the deal when their eyes hit the bottom of the page. And for the opening, Fred James drops a piece of advice that, frankly, sounds like professional sabotage at first glance. He insists that you should write your introduction at the very end of your process.
Wait, that completely violates everything we are taught in standard business communication.
I know.
You're supposed to state your thesis and outline your argument right away. Writing the beginning at the end seems incredibly chaotic from a workflow perspective.
It feels backward, but his logic is absolutely brilliant when you consider the actual psychological process of writing.
Okay, explain that.
Writing isn't just recording thoughts, it is an act of discovery. You might start your initial draft thoroughly convinced that the main selling point of your new software is feature A.
Right.
But halfway through structuring the facts and building the micro context, you suddenly realize that the true highlight, the angle that actually solves a painful problem for the user, is feature B.
Oh, I see where this is going. If you stubbornly lock in your introduction on day one, you end up with an opening that serves as a boring, outdated summary of feature A.
Exactly. It will feel completely disconnected from the true energy of the piece.
This is exactly the same logic used when cutting a movie trailer.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, you cannot possibly cut a compelling trailer before the actual movie has been filmed. You have to wait until all the raw footage is shot and the scenes are assembled.
Because you don't know what you have yet.
Right. Then you review the final cut, extract the most explosive action sequence or the most suspenseful line of dialogue, and you drop those specific breadcrumbs at the very beginning of the trailer to lure the audience in.
That is the perfect analogy. You treat your enterprise copy the exact same way. You tease the most powerful, emotionally resonant elements you discovered while writing the body.
But here's the catch.
What's that?
Once you've lured them in with that movie trailer opening and guided them down the pyramid of facts, their eyes will eventually reach the bottom of the screen.
The end of the page.
Right. At that exact moment, they experience a psychological need for closure. And since our writing has a commercial goal, you can't just trail off and let them close the browser. You need a functional mechanism to close the deal.
Right. And Fred James outlines 4 distinct endings based on your specific business goal.
Okay, let's test your instincts here.
Oh boy.
If you have just walked a prospective client through a complex B2B software pitch, what is your default instinct to wrap it up?
Honestly, my instinct is usually to just summarize everything so they don't forget the key points before they leave.
Which is ending number 1, the summary.
Okay, so I'm not totally wrong.
It feels safe and professional. You recap the main specs.
Okay.
But from an ROI perspective, a basic summary yields a terrible return on investment, especially if you paid a premium for the ad click that brought them to the page.
Because it doesn't ask them to do anything.
Exactly. It doesn't actually ask the reader to take action.
It leaves them stranded at the finish line. That is why ending number 2 is often more effective, the call to action, or CTA.
The classic CTA.
This is where you explicitly tell them to buy, subscribe, or register. The key here is timing. You place the CTA exactly at the bottom of the page, right when their interest and emotional excitement are peaking.
Turning that abstract interest into a measurable business action.
Precisely.
But what if the goal isn't an immediate sale? What if the goal is long-term brand loyalty and trust?
That is where ending number 3 comes in, which is actually my personal favorite.
What's that?
The full circle ending. This is a highly sophisticated approach. You deliberately tie your concluding thoughts back to those exact breadcrumbs you dropped in your movie trailer introduction.
Why does that work so well from a psychological standpoint?
Because it triggers a massive dopamine hit of pattern recognition in the reader's brain. When they see the setup from the introduction finally resolved at the end, the brain rewards them for solving the puzzle.
Well, that's clever.
It makes the reader feel smart, and it creates a subconscious sense of trust. They feel like your brand has guided them on a complete, well-thought-out journey rather than just shouting facts at them.
It provides immense psychological closure. And then the fourth ending is what Fred calls cross-referencing. Instead of letting the reader's journey end completely, you use the final paragraph to link to authoritative industry data, or you recommend other related products in your catalog.
To keep them reading.
Yes, it keeps them trapped within your brand's ecosystem and significantly boosts your website's SEO metrics.
Those are 4 incredibly practical frameworks. But we have to talk about the hidden 5th ending.
Ah, the Easter egg.
Yes, the Easter egg buried in Fred James' text.
This was a brilliant touch. Throughout this section, he explicitly promises the reader that he is going to reveal 5 functional endings.
He really hypes it up.
He does. He walks through the 4 we just discussed: summary, CTA, full circle, and cross-referencing. And then, in his final sentence, he deliberately breaks the 4th wall to admit there is no grand climax and that he only ever had 4 endings.
It was a complete bait-and-switch joke.
Total joke.
It completely caught me off guard. I actually laughed out loud reading a manual on copywriting architecture. Who does that?
But you know, that joke serves a profound purpose. It proves that heavily structured, fact-based enterprise writing does not have to sound like it was produced by a cold, emotionless corporate robot.
That's a great point.
You can deliver a legally compliant, factual bowl of edible white rice and still garnish it with a sense of humor and genuine personality.
Which actually brings us to a really painful reality about our profession.
Okay, lay it on me.
We have all these perfect frameworks now. We understand micro and macro context, we know to use bullet points for the F-shaped scanning pattern, and we know exactly how to structure our endings.
We have the whole toolkit.
Right, so why is sitting down alone at a keyboard still so agonizingly difficult compared to just pitching a product out loud in a room with a client?
Because writing is a fundamentally isolated act with a missing feedback loop.
A missing feedback loop.
Yeah, think about it. When you and I are having a conversation, we have immediate, real-time data. I can see if your eyes glaze over when I use a technical term.
Right, I'd give you a confused look.
Exactly. If I explain something poorly, your facial expression tells me instantly, and I can pivot, rephrase, or use an analogy on the fly.
But you can't do that when you write.
Not at all. When you are writing, you are flying completely blind. You have to anticipate every single logical gap, every potential misunderstanding, and manually pave over it before the reader even realizes the gap exists.
You essentially have to split your brain in 2. You have to play the role of the passionate writer and simultaneously play the role of the deeply skeptical reader.
Which is exhausting.
It is. And that is incredibly hard to do because of a psychological blind spot called the curse of knowledge.
The curse of knowledge.
This is easily the biggest trap for both B2B and B2C marketers. We spend so much time inside our own companies that we end up living in a massive echo chamber.
And the echo chamber destroys effective communication.
It really does.
Let's look at a prime example in the personal computer space. Imagine your marketing team spends 8 hours a day in development meetings with the hardware engineers. You are staring at internal spec sheets all week long.
You start dreaming in spec sheets.
Literally. So when it is time to launch a new consumer laptop, you confidently write website copy bragging about the machine's 120 Hz screen refresh rate and 100% DCI-P3 wide color gamut.
And when you circulate that draft internally, everyone in the marketing department nods and says it sounds incredibly impressive.
Because everyone in that building shares the exact same cursive knowledge.
They all know what it means.
Right. But you have to step outside the corporate bubble. Think about an 18-year-old college student who is browsing your website.
Okay.
They just want a laptop to stream movies in their dorm room. To them, DCI-P3 isn't a selling point. It is literal alien code.
It means nothing to them.
Exactly. It creates a massive wall of friction between the brand and the buyer.
This is where the frontline marketer must deploy their ultimate tool, empathy. You have to translate that cold engineering jargon into a human experience. You take that confusing spec and you rewrite it to say, color so rich it feels like you're sitting in a premium movie theater, and video playback so flawlessly smooth it never flickers.
Much better.
You have to bridge the gap between what the machine technically does and how the machine actually makes the human being feel.
And this critical need for empathy brings us to the elephant in the room.
Oh, boy.
The most urgent shift in our industry today. The AI era. We are no longer just competing against other marketing departments.
Right.
Right now, as we speak, artificial intelligence can instantly generate grammatically flawless, completely accurate white rice enterprise copy.
Faster than any human could.
Way faster. It understands how to build a pyramid structure. It perfectly formats bullet points for visual scanning. It can automatically append a call to action ending.
It can do the micro and macro context processing in a matter of seconds without ever experiencing writer's block.
Which forces us into a very uncomfortable discussion.
It does.
If every single brand on the planet can effortlessly automate perfect, logical, fact-based text tomorrow, the baseline for corporate communication becomes infinitely higher.
Everyone will have a perfectly cooked bowl of white rice.
Exactly. So what is the one differentiator that will make a cynical, screen-fatigued reader actually stop scrolling and believe a real human being is speaking to them?
That is the defining existential challenge for anyone working in corporate strategy today. How do you beat a machine that has a perfect command of the facts?
I don't know. How do you?
Well, Fred James' thesis provides a clear answer, I think. Surviving the AI era isn't about finding better adjectives, and it certainly isn't about using more complex grammar. The answer lies entirely in the unique human capacity for empathy.
Right.
Because an AI can scrape a database to tell you the dimensions of a camera lens, but an AI has never actually felt the anxiety of trying to capture a child's first steps in a dimly lit room before the moment passes.
That is such a powerful distinction.
Empathy allows you to dig deep, find those hidden, unspoken anxieties of the consumer, and create genuine emotional resonance. Understanding the messy, complicated lived experience of your customer is something no language model can simulate.
Empathy isn't just a soft skill anymore.
No, it is the marketer's ultimate weapon for survival. And if you are listening to this, that is the provocative thought I want you to walk away with today.
Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode or marketing topics, feel free to leave a comment below the video. This is Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses. See you next time.